On a stormy night, chaos engulfed a desolate highway as Cristiano Ronaldo's luxury car skidded off the road, crashing into a tree. Rain poured relentlessly, and smoke billowed from the engine, blending with the ominous darkness. Inside the vehicle, Ronaldo, semi-conscious and trapped, struggled to move, his face etched with pain and fear. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a young black teenager named Jamal, soaked to the bone but determined. Spotting the wreckage while biking home, he dropped everything and rushed to the scene. His heart pounded as he assessed the situation. The sight of the global soccer icon trapped inside stunned him, but he shook off his disbelief. The flames licking at the cars had spurred Jamal into action. With no tools but sheer will, he fought against the warped door, eventually prying it open. "Hold on, I've got you," he shouted, his voice trembling but resolute. Pulling Ronaldo free, Jamal dragged him to safety just as the car erupted into flames. Ronaldo's eyes flickered open briefly, locking onto his savior's face before fading back into unconsciousness. Unbeknownst to both, this harrowing encounter was just the beginning of a story that would leave the world in awe. Collision, don't miss the rest of this incredible story. Hit like if Jamal's bravery inspires you. Subscribe to Epic Story Moments for more gripping stories. Let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. Share this video to spread Jamal's courage far and wide. The rain lashed against Jamal's face as he skidded to a halt near the wreck. The mangled luxury car looked like it had been through a war zone. The hood crumpled and smoke pouring from the engine. Flames flickered dangerously close to the fuel tank, threatening to turn the entire vehicle into a fireball at any moment. Jamal's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the scene, his soaked sneakers squelching on the wet pavement. At first, he didn't believe what he saw through the shattered windshield. The man slumped over the steering wheel wasn't just anyone. It was Cristiano Ronaldo, the world-famous soccer icon. His face, usually vibrant and full of life, was pale, a thin trickle of blood running down his temple. Jamal froze for a split second, his mind struggling to process the sight. Ronaldo? Here. But the crackling fire jolted him back to reality. This wasn't the time to think. It was time to act. Jamal sprinted to the driver's side door and yanked at the handle. The door was stuck, bent and warped from the impact. "Come on," he grunted, pulling with all his might. But the door didn't budge. The heat was intensifying, and the smoke was thickening, stinging his eyes and making it hard to breathe. Desperation clawed at him. He looked around, searching for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a large branch that had snapped off a tree during the storm. Without hesitation, he grabbed it, his hands trembling as he wedged it into the small gap of the door. Using the branch as leverage, he pushed with every ounce of strength he had. His muscles burned and the branch groaned under the pressure, but he didn't stop. With a loud creak, the door finally gave way, opening just enough for Jamal to squeeze inside. The heat hit him like a wall, and the acrid smell of burning fuel made him gag. "Hang on," he shouted, unsure if Ronaldo could even hear him. Inside, the scene was worse than he had imagined. Ronaldo was barely conscious, his breathing shallow, and his legs were pinned under the crushed dashboard. Jamal's hands shook as he assessed the situation. The flames were creeping closer, the fire now licking at the edges of the car. "Stay with me," Jamal muttered, grabbing Ronaldo's shoulders. "I'm not leaving you here." He tugged at Ronaldo's legs, trying to free them, but they were trapped. The dashboard was pressing down too hard. Jamal looked around the interior of the car, his mind racing. He spotted a tire iron on the floor of the passenger side. Stretching as far as he could, he grabbed it and wedged it under the dashboard, using it as a lever. He pushed down with all his strength, his arms trembling under the strain. Come on," he muttered through gritted teeth. Finally, the dashboard shifted just enough for him to pull Ronaldo free. Jamal wrapped his arms around the soccer star and dragged him out of the car, stumbling backward onto the wet pavement. Just as they cleared a safe distance, the car erupted into flames, the explosion sending a shockwave through the air. Jamal threw himself over Ronaldo, shielding him from the debris. His ears rang from the blast, and his body shook with exhaustion, but he didn't let go. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Jamal looked down at Ronaldo, who was starting to stir. His eyelids fluttered open, and his gaze met Jamal's. "Thank you," Ronaldo murmured, his voice barely audible over the pounding rain. Jamal felt a lump form in his throat, but he pushed it down. "You're going to be okay," he said, his voice steady despite his own exhaustion. The sound of approaching sirens broke the silence, and Jamal turned to see the flashing lights of an ambulance and police cars. Relief washed over him as paramedics rushed to their side. "He needs help," Jamal said, his voice hoarse from the smoke. The paramedics quickly assessed Ronaldo's condition and began preparing to transport him. One of the paramedics looked at Jamal. "Are you injured?" they asked, noticing the cuts and scrapes on his hands and arms. "I'm fine," Jamal replied, shaking his head. His focus was solely on Ronaldo. As the paramedics lifted Ronaldo onto a stretcher, the soccer star turned his head weakly, his eyes searching for Jamal. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice faint. Jamal hesitated, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just someone who couldn't let you down," he replied, stepping back as the ambulance doors closed. The police approached Jamal, asking for his statement. He explained everything that had happened, downplaying his own bravery. "I just did what anyone would do," he said, shrugging. But as the ambulance sped off into the night, taking Ronaldo to safety, Jamal couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had done something good, something that mattered. By the time Jamal made it home, drenched and exhausted, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving him with aching muscles and a heavy heart. He sat on the edge of his bed, replaying the night's events in his mind. He didn't expect to hear from Ronaldo again. After all, he was just an ordinary teenager from a struggling neighborhood. What Jamal didn't know was that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The story of his heroic act was already spreading, capturing the attention of millions around the world. And Cristiano Ronaldo, the man he had saved, was determined to find the young hero who had risked everything to save his life. The morning after the accident, news of Cristiano Ronaldo's terrifying car crash dominated headlines. From television broadcasts to online news portals, the story spread like wildfire. Soccer superstar narrowly escapes fiery crash. Mysterious teen saves his life. Social media was flooded with pictures of the wreckage, speculation about Ronaldo's condition, and most intriguingly, questions about the identity of the young hero who had risked everything to pull him from the flames. Ronaldo, resting in a private hospital suite, stared at the ceiling, his mind replaying the brief moments before he lost consciousness. The image of the teenager's determined face, drenched in rain and streaked with soot, was etched in his memory. Despite his grogginess and the pain in his body, one thing was clear. He owed his life to that young man. Later that day, Ronaldo made his first public statement. Sitting upright in a hospital bed, he addressed his millions of fans through a video posted on his social media accounts. His voice was calm but firm, his gratitude palpable. "Yesterday, I experienced something that reminded me of the fragility of life." Ronaldo began, his gaze steady. "A young man, whose name I do not know, saved me. He risked his life to pull me from my car when he could have walked away. If you are watching this, please know that I am forever in your debt. I want to meet you, to thank you personally. If anyone has any information about this incredible person, please reach out." The post went viral instantly, racking up millions of views within hours. Fans from around the world poured into the comments, offering support, theories, and prayers. Many echoed Ronaldo's call to find the teen, dubbing him a real-life superhero. Meanwhile, in a modest part of the city, Jamal sat in the corner of his small, dimly lit room, scrolling through his phone. He didn't need a news anchor to tell him what had happened. He had lived it. But as he watched Ronaldo's heartfelt video, a mix of emotions churned in his chest. Ronaldo wanted to meet him. The world wanted to celebrate him. But Jamal wasn't sure he wanted to be found. Life hadn't been kind to him in recent years. At just 17, Jamal had experienced more hardship than most people twice his age. His father had passed away when he was 12, leaving his mother to raise him and his younger siblings on her own. Financial struggles forced Jamal to juggle odd jobs, sacrificing school and any semblance of a normal teenage life. He was no stranger to being overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. And now, the idea of stepping into the spotlight, of being thrust into a world of fame and scrutiny, was overwhelming. "They'll expect me to be someone I'm not," Jamal muttered, tossing his phone onto his bed. His younger sister, Amara, peeked into the room. "I saw you on the news," she said quietly. "Mom did too." Jamal froze. "She knows?" Amara nodded. "She's proud of you." She said Dad would be too. Those words hit Jamal like a punch to the gut. His father had always taught him to stand tall, to be brave, and to do the right thing no matter the cost. But Jamal still hesitated. He thought about the reporters who might come knocking, the cameras that would follow him, and the expectations that would weigh on his shoulders. "I'm just a kid from the neighborhood," he said aloud, as if convincing himself. "What does someone like Ronaldo want with me?" Ronaldo's quest to find his savior only grew more intense over the following days. Fans, reporters, and even social media influencers joined in the search, trying to track down the mysterious teenager who had saved Ronaldo's life. Each lead proved to be a dead end, which only increased Ronaldo's sense of urgency. He needed to meet this young man, to thank him properly, and offer him whatever help he could. Despite all this, Jamal remained elusive. He didn't respond to any of the numerous calls for information, choosing instead to keep to himself. The pressure mounted, but so did his internal struggle. Jamal didn't want to be in the spotlight. He didn't want to be a hero. He was just doing what anyone would have done in the same situation. But the public's demand for answers was relentless. Ronaldo, too, was growing frustrated. His team had contacted local hospitals and police departments, trying to find any clue that could lead them to the teen. Still, no one could provide any concrete information. Ronaldo spent hours every day searching through the flood of social media posts, but every time he thought he was close to finding the teen, the trail went cold. One night, sitting alone in his luxurious home, Ronaldo scrolled through the countless posts about the rescue, his mind racing with thoughts of the boy. "I can't let this go," he said aloud, his tone filled with determination. "This kid deserves to know that I'm grateful." He reached out to his team once again, instructing them to keep searching. But this time, he added a personal message. "No matter where you find him, tell him that I owe him my life." Meanwhile, Jamal was beginning to feel the weight of the world pressing on him. Everywhere he went, people were whispering about him, congratulating him for being a hero. His friends at school, his neighbors, even strangers on the street, all praised his bravery. But deep down, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he wasn't ready for. The next morning, Jamal sat with his mother at the kitchen table. The news had been on all morning, and once again, he saw his face plastered across the screen. But this time, there was something different in his mother's eyes. "I saw the video," she said, breaking the silence. "He's looking for you." Jamal paused, his fork hovering above his plate. He hadn't expected this. For the first time, he could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "You've always been brave, Jamal," his mother continued. "Even when things got hard, you never gave up." Jamal's thoughts drifted to that rainy night, the moment when he had pulled Ronaldo from the wreckage. It had been instinct, a split-second decision, nothing more. But now, it seemed like the universe was demanding something from him. "I don't want all this attention," Jamal said softly, pushing his plate aside. His mother smiled gently, as if understanding exactly what he was going through. "You don't have to take the spotlight, Jamal, but you can't hide forever. Sometimes, we have to step forward, not for the world, but for ourselves." Jamal stared at her, then at the TV screen, where Ronaldo's face smiled back at him. It was as if everything had led to this moment. The tension reached its peak when Jamal, after days of hesitation, made up his mind. Despite his fears, he knew it was time to step forward. The next morning, he sent an anonymous message to Ronaldo's team, providing his contact information. "I'm the one who saved him," the message simply read. The decision to finally reveal himself marked the beginning of a new chapter for Jamal. The story was far from over, and the consequences of his brave act were only just starting to unfold. Jamal's world was one of constant struggle, where hope was a fragile thread and dreams felt like distant stars. Despite the hardships, he never lost sight of his one true passion: soccer. The sport had been his escape, his refuge from the weight of life's burdens. But growing up in a rough neighborhood, the odds had always been stacked against him. His family lived in a modest apartment in a neighborhood where the sound of sirens was as common as the laughter of children. The streets were littered with the remnants of broken dreams, and Jamal had seen more than his fair share of struggle. He had grown up with the realization that life wasn't fair, but that didn't stop him from dreaming. Jamal's mother, Carla, had raised him and his younger sister, Amara, alone after his father's untimely death. His father had been a hard-working man who had done everything he could to provide for his family. But the day he passed away from a heart attack, when Jamal was just 12, everything changed. The burden of responsibility fell onto Carla's shoulders, and Jamal had to grow up fast. Carla worked long hours at a local diner, barely making enough to cover the bills. Jamal understood that every dollar she brought home was a sacrifice. He watched his mother struggle, but she never once complained. She had dreams of her own, dreams that had been put on hold for the sake of her children. And it was because of her sacrifices that Jamal held onto his dream of becoming a professional soccer player. But soccer, for Jamal, wasn't just a game. It was a thread that kept him going when life seemed unbearable. It was his outlet, the one thing that made him feel free. Every day after school, Jamal would grab his worn-out soccer ball, which he had gotten as a gift from his father years ago, and head to the nearby park. The local field wasn't much. It was filled with cracks in the ground and the goalposts were bent from years of use. But it was enough for Jamal. He practiced tirelessly, his determination shining brighter than any obstacle that stood in his way. But his dream was just that, a dream. Every time Jamal looked at the professional players on TV, his heart ached. He saw himself there in their shoes, playing before thousands of fans, living the life he always dreamed of. But that dream always felt out of reach. The harsh reality was that Jamal didn't have the resources to pursue his passion like many other kids did. His family's financial situation was dire, and soccer camps, private coaching, or even proper gear were things he could only wish for. He didn't have the luxury of being able to play for a travel team or to get the exposure needed to be scouted by professional clubs. All he had was his talent and the burning desire to make something of himself. But talent alone wasn't enough. Jamal knew this. His friends from the neighborhood had similar dreams, but many had already given up, turned to other means of survival, or drifted into the trap of street life. The world outside his apartment complex often seemed like a dead end for young men like him. And yet, Jamal held on, clutching to the hope that one day he would find a way out. It wasn't just soccer that weighed on Jamal's shoulders. It was the entire family. Being the eldest son, Jamal felt the responsibility to protect his younger sister, Amara, and ensure she didn't have to endure the same struggles he faced. He made sure she had what she needed, even if it meant sacrificing his own comfort. In school, Jamal was a quiet, thoughtful kid. His teachers knew him as the boy who sat at the back of the class, never causing trouble, but always paying attention. He wasn't the best student, but he was determined. His grades were good enough to keep him out of trouble, but his heart wasn't in the textbooks. His mind wandered to soccer practice, to the possibility of being scouted by a professional team, to the chance that he might escape the life he had been born into. His friends, on the other hand, often joked about his dream, teasing him for living in a fantasy world. They didn't understand. To them, soccer was a hobby, something to do after school when there was nothing else to do. They didn't see the hours of practice, the sweat and exhaustion, the sacrifices that Jamal had made. They didn't know that Jamal was playing for something bigger than just a game. He was playing for a future that was slipping further away with every passing day. Jamal's dream didn't just belong to him. It belonged to his mother too. He often thought about the promises he had made to her when he was younger. "I'm going to make you proud, Mom. I'll get us out of here. I promise." These words echoed in his mind like a mantra, reminding him of the weight of his promise. He knew his mother didn't expect anything from him, but Jamal had always believed that he was capable of something greater. If only he could catch a break. If only he could get a shot. Despite all the obstacles, Jamal continued to play. It wasn't just a game to him, it was his life. He spent hours perfecting his footwork, his dribbling, his shots. But as the years passed, he became acutely aware of the disparity between himself and the players he saw on TV. They had coaches, trainers, sponsorships. They had the resources to hone their craft. And then there was Jamal, playing on a cracked, dirt-covered field, wearing shoes that were too small for him, his ball deflated from constant use. But it wasn't just the material things that held Jamal back. It was a lack of opportunities. No one ever came to scout him. No one ever took the time to see the raw potential that he had. For all his dedication, his skills remained hidden, unnoticed by the world. He wondered if he would ever get the chance to prove himself. It was during this time of frustration that fate intervened in the form of a rainy night and a chance encounter with the very man Jamal had always admired, Cristiano Ronaldo. As Jamal stood on the muddy field, his legs sore and his mind overwhelmed by the weight of his dreams, he had no idea that this was the moment that would change everything. Ronaldo, in need of a hero, had come into his life when he least expected it. But even after pulling him from the wreckage of his car, Jamal still didn't see the significance of his actions. He didn't realize that this single moment would become the turning point in his life, the moment that would make his dreams of playing soccer professionally feel like they might finally come true. The rescue was no accident, it was fate. And for Jamal, it would prove to be the spark that ignited a new chapter in his life, one where the world could no longer ignore him or his talent. But for now, he was still grappling with the choice of whether to step into the light, to allow his dreams to grow beyond the confines of his small world, and to face the fear of finally being seen. The path ahead was uncertain, but Jamal knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones fought within ourselves. And for Jamal, the biggest battle would be finding the courage to chase the dreams he had always kept hidden in the depths of his heart. It had been several weeks since Jamal had saved Cristiano Ronaldo from the wreckage of his car, but the memory of that night still lingered in the back of his mind like a faint whisper, a part of a dream he hadn't quite woken up from. For a brief moment, Jamal allowed himself to imagine what might happen next. But as always, life had a way of throwing up walls, his family, his job struggles, and the harsh realities of his everyday existence. The world hadn't changed, and neither had his circumstances. He was still stuck in the same place he had been for years. Jamal continued his life, moving through the motions, doing what he could to get by. The soccer field still remained his refuge, but it also reminded him of the reality that he might never get his big break. His dream seemed further out of reach than ever, especially with the overwhelming burden of his responsibilities. Then one day, a letter arrived at his doorstep, its contents far from ordinary. The envelope was simple, but its contents would change everything. Jamal, barely able to pay his rent and struggling to keep his family afloat, had been busy fixing up his bike when he noticed the official-looking envelope in his mailbox. It was addressed to him with a return address that caught his eye. Cristiano Ronaldo, seated at our Point 7 Foundation. A rush of confusion and disbelief washed over him as he opened the letter, carefully peeling it apart with shaking hands. As soon as he saw the logo of Ronaldo's foundation, Jamal could hardly believe it. What could the famous footballer possibly want with someone like him? His mind raced with 1,000 questions, and his fingers trembled as he unfolded the letter inside. Dear Jamal, I hope this letter finds you well. I want to express my deepest gratitude for your incredible act of bravery in saving my life on that rainy night. It was a moment I will never forget, and I am eternally grateful for your quick thinking and selflessness. In recognition of your incredible kindness and strength, I'd like to personally invite you to a special community event we are organizing next week in your neighborhood. I'd love for you to be there, not just as a guest, but as a guest of honor. Please join me as we celebrate heroes like you who make a difference in the world, no matter the circumstances. This event is for you, Jamal. I look forward to seeing you there. Warm regards, Cristiano Ronaldo. Jamal sat stunned, his mind grappling with what he had just read. Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, the world-renowned footballer, wanted him to attend a community event as a guest of honor. He had no words to describe the feeling that surged through him. This wasn't just a random gesture of kindness. This was an acknowledgement of everything Jamal had hoped for. His moment in the spotlight had arrived, sooner than he ever expected. But as soon as the shock of the invitation wore off, reality began to set in. Jamal didn't belong in a room with people like Ronaldo. He was just a kid from the streets, a kid with a dream he'd never been able to fully chase. His clothes were worn, his shoes threadbare. How could he stand in front of others, in front of a football legend, when his own life seemed so incomplete? But deep down, Jamal knew he couldn't turn down the opportunity. He had to face it. This was his chance. His chance to not only meet his idol, but to embrace the possibility that his life could be more than what it was. The day of the event arrived, and Jamal stood in front of the venue, feeling a knot in his stomach. He had never felt more out of place in his life. The sleek, polished exterior of the building was a stark contrast to the modest apartment he called home. The faces surrounding him, many of whom were suited up and grinning from ear to ear, seemed so distant, so foreign. Jamal felt small in their presence. Still, he took a deep breath and entered. Inside, the energy was electric. The hall was filled with people, including local community leaders, press, and even some of Ronaldo's teammates. Large banners with Ronaldo's face adorned the walls, and the air was thick with excitement. It was everything Jamal had never known but always dreamed of. As Jamal entered the room, he was escorted to a front row seat, a place of honor that he hadn't earned yet, but he had been given regardless. He could feel the weight of all the eyes that glanced his way, the curious looks, the whispers. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he certainly hadn't imagined this level of attention. Ronaldo had invited Jamal not only because of his heroism, but because he had seen something in the young man, a resilience that he knew was worth recognizing. As the event began, the crowd gathered in anticipation, and there was a palpable buzz in the air. Then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Cristiano Ronaldo made his entrance. The crowd erupted in applause as he walked to the front of the room, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the hall. "Good evening, everyone," Ronaldo began, his voice warm yet powerful. "Tonight, we gather to celebrate not just the power of sports, but the power of kindness, the power of humanity. Sometimes, the most unexpected people are the ones who make the biggest difference." The audience listened intently as Ronaldo spoke, his words echoing in the hall. Then he turned to Jamal, his face breaking into a smile as he gestured for him to come forward. "Jamal," he said, "you saved my life, and I will never forget that. You are a true hero, and it's an honor to have you here tonight." The room fell silent as Jamal stood, his heart racing. Every step he took felt surreal, as though he were walking in a dream. When he reached the stage, Ronaldo placed a hand on his shoulder. "Jamal, I want to thank you for showing us all that bravery, kindness, and humility still exist in this world." Ronaldo continued, "You are an inspiration, and this is your moment. You've proven that no matter where you come from, you can change the world." The applause that followed was deafening, and Jamal felt overwhelmed, his emotions spilling over. He never imagined that something like this would happen to him. Never imagined he'd be standing next to Ronaldo, in front of so many people, being celebrated for something so simple yet so profound. I don't know what to say," Jamal stammered, his voice breaking with emotion. "I just did what anyone would have done. I didn't expect anything." Ronaldo smiled. "That's the beauty of it, Jamal. You didn't do it for recognition. You did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's why we're here, to honor that." The crowd cheered, and for a brief moment, Jamal felt as though the weight of the world had been lifted off his shoulders. This was more than just a celebration. It was a turning point in his life. He was no longer just a boy from the streets with a dream. He was someone who had made a difference, someone who had been seen. Later that evening, as the event wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Jamal found himself in a quiet conversation with Ronaldo, who asked about his life and his dreams. Jamal spoke honestly about his struggles, his hopes, and the path that had led him here. Ronaldo listened intently, offering words of encouragement. "You have a gift, Jamal," Ronaldo said. "Don't let anyone tell you that you can't achieve what you dream of. Keep pushing, and I'll be here to support you." It was in that moment, surrounded by the excitement of the evening, that Jamal realized his life had changed. Not because of the recognition or the applause, but because someone who had made it to the top believed in him. And that belief gave him the strength to believe in himself. As the evening drew to a close, Jamal stepped outside into the cool night air, a new sense of hope rising within him. The stars above seemed a little brighter now, and for the first time in a long time, he believed that his dreams might just come true. The applause had barely faded before Ronaldo, the world-renowned soccer icon, approached Jamal again, his expression soft but intense. The event was winding down, but the impact of that night would last far beyond the clinking of glasses and the murmurs of a crowd settling into their normal routines. For Jamal, this moment would remain etched in his memory forever. As the last of the guests filtered out of the venue, Ronaldo found Jamal in the corner, his face alight with the fire of possibility, but tinged with the weight of what was to come. "Jamal," Ronaldo began, his voice calm but firm, "you've done something extraordinary. But now, I want to do something for you." Jamal looked at him, his mind still racing. It was hard to believe this was real. After all, he was still just a teenager from the wrong side of the tracks, a boy with dreams bigger than his means. How could this football legend be standing before him, offering him more than a simple thank you? "I've seen your potential," Ronaldo continued, "and I believe in your talent, not just as a person, but as a soccer player. I've been given incredible opportunities in my life, and now I want to give you the same chance. I want to offer you a mentorship, Jamal, someone who can guide you through the next steps of your journey." Jamal stood there, stunned. His mind raced, trying to grasp the magnitude of what Ronaldo was saying. A mentorship? From Ronaldo himself? But there was more. "I also want to offer you a scholarship to a top soccer academy. This will give you the training, the resources, and the exposure you need to make your dreams come true. I want you to take this opportunity and never look back. You deserve it." For the first time that evening, Jamal's voice faltered. "But, Mr. Ronaldo, I don't know if I'm ready for something like that. I've never had the chance to train properly, and my family, I'm not sure they'll understand. I've been so focused on just surviving. I'm not sure how to even start." Ronaldo placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, looking at him with empathy and understanding. "No one ever feels ready when they're given an opportunity like this, Jamal. But I see your heart, and I see your drive. That's what matters. The rest will come. You don't have to do it alone. I'll be there to help guide you." Jamal looked at Ronaldo, his chest swelling with emotions he didn't know how to express. This wasn't just about soccer anymore. It was about believing in himself again, about the chance to rewrite his future. "Thank you," he whispered, barely able to believe what was happening. As the words left his mouth, Ronaldo smiled, his eyes glinting with determination. "This is just the beginning, Jamal. Now it's up to you to make the most of it." The news of Jamal's mentorship and scholarship quickly spread like wildfire. Ronaldo's public announcement, made through his social media platforms and in interviews, sparked a frenzy. The media latched onto the story of the young teen who had saved the life of the football icon, only to find himself gifted with a second chance, an opportunity to follow his dreams. Television stations, newspapers, and online outlets all sought to cover the story. Jamal's face appeared on the front pages, his story making waves not only in the sports world, but also in the hearts of millions around the globe. His tale of bravery, kindness, and hope struck a chord with people from all walks of life. But what made the story truly remarkable wasn't just a dramatic rescue. It was the impact of Ronaldo's life-changing gesture. Within days, Jamal became a symbol of hope for many. People from all over the world were inspired by the teenager who had saved the life of one of the most famous athletes in the world and was now on his way to becoming one of them. His story was being shared widely, not only for his bravery, but for his humility and perseverance. The media had embraced him, but it wasn't just the recognition that mattered. It was the fact that Jamal now had a chance to prove himself in a way that had always seemed out of reach. Despite the mounting pressure of his newfound fame, Jamal kept a low profile, focusing on what Ronaldo had promised him. He worked hard to prepare for the soccer academy, training every day in the hopes of finally getting his shot. He practiced endlessly, refining his skills, improving his stamina, and making sure he was ready for the challenge ahead. Ronaldo stayed in touch, offering advice and encouragement whenever Jamal needed it. Stay humble, Ronaldo would remind him. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Jamal took those words to heart, pushing himself harder than ever before. And as the academy date drew closer, he began to feel a sense of belonging, something he had never felt before. He wasn't just a kid trying to survive anymore. He was a soccer player with a real future. Meanwhile, the world continued to watch Jamal's journey unfold. Social media posts filled with hashtags like #JamalTheHero and #RonaldoMentorsJamal began to flood the internet. People shared his story not just as a tale of redemption, but as a beacon of inspiration for anyone who had ever faced adversity. What began as a random act of kindness, a teenager saving a life, had snowballed into a movement. Young people, especially from underprivileged backgrounds, saw Jamal as a representation of what was possible if you dared to dream. They saw that no matter where you came from, your story could change. His journey sparked conversations about how society often overlooked people who came from tough backgrounds, dismissing them as lost causes before they even had a chance. But Jamal had proven that when given a chance, people could rise above their circumstances and accomplish great things. The media coverage didn't stop there. Jamal was interviewed on various talk shows, given the opportunity to speak about his journey, his dreams, and the impact Ronaldo had on his life. During one of these interviews, Jamal said, "I never thought something like this could happen to me. I just tried to do the right thing, and look where it's brought me. I want to show everyone that no matter where you start, your story doesn't have to end there. It's never too late to change your path." As Jamal's story gained momentum, so did his resolve. When the time came for him to attend the soccer academy, he entered with a newfound sense of purpose. The young man who had once struggled to make ends meet was now surrounded by coaches, mentors, and players who believed in him and his abilities. He wasn't just one of many aspiring players. He had a purpose now, a chance to fulfill the dreams he had held onto for so long. As he worked through the academy's rigorous training program, Ronaldo's guidance remained a constant source of inspiration. Jamal kept in touch with him, sharing his progress and receiving advice from someone who had been where he was. Ronaldo's belief in him never wavered, and neither did Jamal's determination to make his mentor proud. The media coverage of Jamal's transformation didn't fade, and he soon became not just an inspiration in the world of sports, but a symbol of perseverance and hope. His story proved that dreams were worth chasing, no matter how impossible they seemed. His story, now intertwined with Ronaldo's, was one of resilience, mentorship, and the undeniable power of a life-changing gesture. Jamal knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that he would face obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But he also knew that with the support of people like Ronaldo and the millions of people who had followed his journey, He had the strength to overcome whatever came his way. And as he stood on the soccer field, surrounded by his teammates and mentors, Jamal realized that he wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. He was living it. And the future had never looked brighter. As the months passed, Jamal's progress at the soccer academy was nothing short of extraordinary. What had once seemed like an impossible dream, a young, struggling teenager from the toughest parts of the city now training to be a professional soccer player, was becoming a reality. And all of this was happening under the watchful eye of none other than Cristiano Ronaldo, the very man whose life Jamal had saved. Ronaldo's mentorship had transformed Jamal, not just as a player, but as a person. Every practice, every drill, every word of advice from Ronaldo pushed Jamal further toward his goal. Ronaldo was more than just a coach. He was a symbol of everything Jamal aspired to be. The man who had once been a symbol of success and fame had become his guiding star, showing him that with the right guidance and dedication, greatness was within reach. Jamal's performance on the field was improving day by day. He was faster, sharper, and more disciplined than ever before. His natural talent, which had once been stifled by a lack of proper training, was now being honed and perfected. With Ronaldo's support, Jamal began to believe in himself in ways he never had before. But it wasn't just his skills that were improving. Jamal's mental game had also transformed. Under Ronaldo's mentorship, he learned how to stay focused under pressure, how to stay calm when the stakes were highest, and how to rise above the distractions of life. It wasn't just about the game. It was about becoming a professional in every sense of the word. The academy's coaches began to take notice of Jamal's potential. They saw the fire in his eyes, the relentless drive that set him apart from the other players. His technical ability was growing, but it was his work ethic that made him stand out. He was always the first to arrive at practice and the last to leave. He knew that success was built not on talent alone, but on the sweat and dedication that came with it. One afternoon, as Jamal was finishing up a grueling training session, Ronaldo pulled him aside. The two stood by the sidelines, watching the other players go through their drills. Ronaldo's face was thoughtful, his gaze fixed on Jamal. "You've come a long way, Jamal," Ronaldo said, his voice steady but filled with pride. "I've watched you grow, not just as a player, but as a person. You've got the potential to go far in this game, but it's not just about soccer. It's about what kind of man you're becoming along the way. You're showing everyone, including me, that nothing is impossible if you put in the work." Jamal looked at Ronaldo, his heart swelling with gratitude. The man who had given him this opportunity, who had believed in him when no one else had, was now telling him that he was on the right path. He had always believed in his dreams, but now, with Ronaldo's guidance, those dreams felt closer than ever before. "I wouldn't have made it this far without you, Mr. Ronaldo," Jamal replied, his voice sincere. "You've shown me what it means to be a true professional, not just on the field, but in life. I'll keep working hard, I promise." Ronaldo smiled and clapped him on the back. "I know you will. Keep pushing yourself. You're not just playing for yourself anymore. You're playing for all the people who believed in you, for everyone who looks up to you now." The words resonated with Jamal. He wasn't just playing for the academy, or even for Ronaldo. He was playing for the countless people who had never been given a chance, for those who had seen the same struggles he had and still dreamed of something more. He was playing for those who had believed in him from the beginning. Jamal's hard work paid off in ways he had never expected. His name began to circulate among scouts and coaches from top-tier clubs, and before long, he was invited to participate in trials for some of the biggest teams in the world. The invitation alone was a testament to how far he had come. Ronaldo was by his side every step of the way, offering guidance and advice. Jamal had become not just a mentee, but a confidant, someone Ronaldo trusted and believed in. They spoke about the game, about life, about the challenges that came with fame and success. Ronaldo knew better than anyone the pressures that Jamal would face as he moved forward, and he made sure Jamal was prepared. Remember, Ronaldo would often say, "It's not just about the game. It's about who you are when the lights go off." Always stay grounded, Jamal. Never forget where you came from. Those words stayed with Jamal, reminding him every day that his journey wasn't just about achieving his own dreams. It was about setting an example for others. He had come from a place where hope seemed distant, and now he had a chance to show others that no matter how difficult life was, a new beginning was always possible. It wasn't long before Jamal's hard work paid off. He was offered a spot on one of the most prestigious soccer teams in Europe, a dream come true for any player, but especially for someone who had once been living on the streets, fighting just to survive. The announcement of Jamal's contract signing made headlines across the globe. His story was everywhere, an underdog who had fought against all odds, who had gone from being a homeless teen to a rising soccer star. People couldn't get enough of his journey. He became a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that anything was possible with dedication and the right support. But despite the fame and the spotlight, Jamal remained humble. He knew that his success wasn't just his own. It was the result of everyone who had believed in him. Most of all, it was because of the mentorship he had received from Ronaldo. He owed everything to that fateful night, to the moment when he had pulled Ronaldo from the wrecked car and saved his life. One evening, after Jamal had signed his contract and was preparing for his first match with his new team, Ronaldo reached out to him. They spoke on the phone, and for a moment, it felt as though nothing had changed. Jamal was still the same young man he had always been, grateful, humble, and determined to make a difference. "I'm proud of you, Jamal," Ronaldo said, his voice filled with pride. "You've earned this. But don't forget where you came from. Stay true to yourself. You're not just a player now. You're an inspiration." Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes as he listened to Ronaldo's words. He had made it, but more than that, he had made it with integrity, with hard work, and with the support of someone who had never given up on him. As the phone call ended, Jamal looked out at the field in front of him, where his future awaited. It had been a long, difficult journey, but it had led him here. And as he stood on the brink of a new chapter, he knew one thing for sure. His journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Cristiano Ronaldo, watching from afar, couldn't help but reflect on how fate had brought them together. He thought about that night, the rain, the crash, and the young man who had saved his life. He thought about how that one moment had changed not just Jamal's life, but his own as well. He had been given the chance to give back, to help someone who had been forgotten by the world, to give them the hope they needed to change their future. As Jamal took to the field in his first professional match, Ronaldo watched from a distance, his heart full of pride. He had mentored many players throughout his career, but Jamal's story would always be one of the most special, because it wasn't just about the game. It was about the power of kindness, the impact of mentorship, and the belief that anyone, no matter where they started, could achieve greatness. Jamal was no longer just a boy from the streets. He was a rising star, a young man who had changed his life and was now changing the lives of others. He had proven that no matter how hard life got, a new beginning was always possible. And it all started with one simple act of kindness.